The morning started like any other in Chicago. The sun rose over the skyline, casting golden light on the streets below. People hurried to their jobs, sipping coffee from paper cups and chatting about the weather or last night's game. Cars honked, buses rumbled, and the city buzzed with its usual energy. But by mid-morning, everything changed. At first, it was just a shadow, a strange darkness creeping across the sky. People stopped what they were doing and looked up. The source of the shadow wasn't clouds, it was something massive hovering silently above the city. A ship, an alien ship. Its surface shimmered faintly, reflecting the sunlight in a way that made it look almost alive. No one spoke at first. Everyone just stared, frozen in awe and fear. Alex Carter was one of them. He had been kneeling next to a beat-up sedan on the side of the road, tightening a bolt with a wrench. When the shadow fell over him, he paused and squinted upward. His hands slipped off the wrench, clattering onto the pavement. "What the?" he muttered under his breath. For a moment, he thought it might be some kind of military experiment gone wrong. But deep down, he knew better. This wasn't human-made. It was too big, too smooth, too alien. A few blocks away, Claire Bennett froze as well. She was a nurse, heading to her shift at the hospital. Her bag, filled with medical supplies, hung heavily from her shoulder. She tilted her head back, her wide eyes scanning the underside of the enormous vessel. Her heart raced. Was this real? Was she dreaming? She reached out instinctively, grabbing the arm of a stranger standing beside her. "Do you see that?" she asked, her voice trembling. The stranger didn't answer. He was too busy staring, his mouth hanging open. All around them, people murmured in confusion, panic beginning to ripple through the crowd. Phones came out as everyone tried to capture the moment, snapping photos and recording videos. Some called loved ones, their voices shaky. Others simply stood there, paralyzed by the sight. Then the voice came. It boomed across the city, louder than thunder but calm and steady. "Humans, we are the Valith. You have been chosen." The words echoed in perfect English, resonating in every direction. People gasped, some dropping to their knees in shock. Alex felt a chill run down his spine. Chosen for what? He glanced around, searching for answers in the faces of others. No one seemed to know. Claire tightened her grip on her bag. "Chosen for what?" she whispered to herself, though her voice was drowned out by the collective murmur of the crowd. Before anyone could react further, beams of light shot down from the ship. They moved quickly, sweeping through streets and buildings, pulling random individuals into the air. Screams erupted as men, women, and even children were lifted off their feet, vanishing into thin air. Alex saw a man near him get caught in one of the beams. He struggled briefly before disappearing entirely. Panic surged through Alex's body. He dropped his tools and ran, dodging between cars and pushing past terrified pedestrians. But no matter how fast he moved, he couldn't outrun the beam that suddenly engulfed him. His vision blurred as he felt himself being yanked upward, weightless and disoriented. The last thing he saw was the ground shrinking beneath him. Claire didn't try to run. She stood rooted to the spot, clutching her bag tightly. When the beam hit her, she closed her eyes and held her breath, bracing for the worst. But instead of pain, she felt warmth, a strange, tingling sensation that wrapped around her entire body. Then, just as quickly as it had begun, the sensation stopped. She opened her eyes to find herself inside the alien ship. It was unlike anything she had ever seen. The walls glowed softly, pulsing with a faint light that seemed alive. Strange symbols floated in the air, shifting and changing like smoke. Around her, dozens of other humans stood in stunned silence, their faces pale with fear. Some were crying, others muttering prayers. Claire recognized a few familiar faces, people she had passed on the street moments ago, but most were strangers. Among them was Alex. He looked dazed, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. Their eyes met briefly, and Claire gave him a small, uncertain nod. Whatever was happening, they weren't alone. A loud hum filled the room, drawing everyone's attention to the far end. There, a towering figure emerged. It was an alien, one of the Veilith. Its body was sleek and metallic, with elongated limbs and a featureless face save for two glowing eyes. It moved gracefully, exuding an aura of power and authority. Behind it stood several smaller figures, presumably more Veilith, though they remained silent and still. "You are here because you have been selected," the lead Veilith said, its voice deep and resonant. Unlike the booming announcement earlier, this tone was cold and clinical. "Your species is weak, but your adaptability makes you useful. We require soldiers to fight in our war against the Krill." The humans exchanged confused glances. War? Against who? And why us? No one dared to speak, though questions swirled in their minds. Alex swallowed hard, trying to process what he was hearing. Soldiers? They wanted ordinary people like him to fight in some intergalactic conflict? Claire took a step forward, her voice shaking but determined. "Why are you doing this? Why pick us?" The Veilith turned its gaze toward her, its glowing eyes narrowing slightly. "You are expendable. Your lives mean little compared to the survival of our empire. Compliance will ensure your continued existence. Resistance will result in termination." A chill swept through the room. Expendable. That single word hung in the air like a death sentence. Claire stumbled back, her knees threatening to buckle. Alex moved closer to her, offering silent support. He didn't fully understand what was happening, but one thing was clear. They had no choice. For now, resistance was impossible. The Veilith gestured, and the group was herded into another chamber. This room was larger, filled with strange devices and glowing panels. Human captives were separated into smaller groups, each assigned to a Veilith instructor. Alex and Claire ended up together along with about a dozen others. Their instructor, a shorter but equally imposing Veilith, began issuing commands in clipped mechanical tones. "Observe. Learn. Adapt," it instructed, pointing to a series of floating holograms. The images depicted weapons, armor, and tactical maneuvers. None of it made sense to Alex or Claire at first, but they watched closely, committing every detail to memory. Around them, others reacted differently. Some broke down in tears, overwhelmed by the situation. Others lashed out in anger, shouting curses at the Veilith. Those who resisted were quickly subdued, dragged away without explanation. Hours passed, or maybe days. Time seemed to blur aboard the ship. The humans were subjected to grueling exercises designed to test their physical and mental limits. Gravity shifted unpredictably, forcing them to adapt to different environments. Painful simulations pushed them to their breaking points. Yet despite the hardships, something remarkable began to emerge. Alex noticed it first. Despite their fear, the humans were learning. They were adapting faster than the Veilith expected. Claire proved particularly skilled at deciphering the alien technology, her medical background giving her an edge in understanding the complex systems. Alex, meanwhile, found himself excelling in strategy, analyzing patterns and anticipating outcomes during training exercises. One evening, after a particularly brutal session, Alex pulled Claire aside. They sat together in a corner of the chamber away from prying eyes. "They think we're weak," he said quietly, his voice low enough that only she could hear. "But if we play our cards right, maybe we can turn this around." Claire nodded, slowly, her mind racing with possibilities. She didn't know how yet, but she agreed with Alex. If they could survive this, if they could prove themselves stronger than the Veilith anticipated, perhaps there was hope, not just for them, but for all of humanity. The days, or what felt like days, on the alien ship blurred together for Alex and Claire. The Veilith didn't seem to care about human concepts like time or rest. Training sessions stretched on endlessly, interrupted only by brief periods of forced sleep in cold, sterile chambers. The humans were pushed harder than they thought possible, their bodies and minds tested in ways they couldn't have imagined. At first, many struggled. Some collapsed under the weight of the gravity shifts, their legs buckling as the floor seemed to press down on them with unbearable force. Others panicked during combat drills, unable to keep up with the Veilith's expectations. But Alex noticed something early on. Humans weren't giving up. Even when they failed, they tried again and again. They stumbled, fell, and got back up, driven by a stubborn determination that surprised even themselves. Claire found her place quickly. While others focused on mastering weapons or learning alien fighting techniques, she gravitated toward the strange medical pods scattered throughout the training area. These pods looked like oversized capsules, glowing faintly with an eerie blue light. Inside, injured humans, or sometimes Veilith, were placed for healing. The technology was far beyond anything Claire had ever seen, but she realized it wasn't entirely foreign. It reminded her of the machines in her hospital, just smarter, more advanced. She spent hours watching the Veilith instructors operate the pods, observing how they adjusted settings and monitored vital signs. At first, she doubted she could understand any of it, but then she started noticing patterns. Certain symbols corresponded to specific body functions. A flickering light indicated low oxygen levels. A pulsing hum signaled rapid cell regeneration. Slowly, piece by piece, she began piecing it all together. One day, after a particularly intense exercise, a young man named Ryan collapsed. His breathing was shallow, his face pale. The Veilith instructor barked orders, gesturing for someone to drag him into a pod. Claire stepped forward without thinking. "Let me try," she said, her voice steady despite the fear bubbling inside. The Veilith hesitated, its glowing eyes narrowing. Then it nodded curtly, stepping aside. Claire took a deep breath and approached the pod. Her hands trembled as she adjusted the controls, mimicking what she'd seen the instructors do. She focused on Ryan's vitals, tweaking settings until the hum grew steadier. After what felt like an eternity, the pod's light shifted from red to green. Ryan stirred, his eyes fluttering open. He looked up at Claire, confused but alive. The Veilith said nothing, but Claire caught a flicker of approval in its gaze. From that moment on, she became the go-to person for medical emergencies among the humans. It wasn't much, but it gave her a sense of purpose, a small victory in an otherwise hopeless situation. Meanwhile, Alex threw himself into combat training. He wasn't the strongest or fastest in the group, but he had something else: strategy. Growing up, he'd spent countless hours playing chess with his grandfather, learning to think several moves ahead. That skill served him well now. During simulations, he studied the enemy's movements, anticipating attacks before they happened. He worked closely with Jake Thompson, a burly former construction worker who had brute strength on his side. Jake was a natural fighter, able to overpower most opponents with sheer force. But he lacked finesse, often charging headfirst into danger without considering the consequences. Alex helped him refine his approach, teaching him how to use his surroundings to his advantage. Together they formed an unlikely duo. Jake provided the muscle, while Alex supplied the brains. Their teamwork caught the attention of the other humans and eventually the Veilith. During one particularly brutal simulation, the humans were pitted against a squad of robotic drones programmed to mimic the krill, the insect-like species the Veilith were at war with. The drones moved with terrifying speed, their metallic limbs slicing through the air. Panic spread among the humans as they scrambled to defend themselves. Many fell within seconds, overwhelmed by the relentless assault. But Alex and Jake held their ground. They positioned themselves near a stack of crates, using them as cover while they picked off the drones one by one. When the robots closed in, Jake charged forward, smashing them with his bare hands. Meanwhile, Alex darted around, disabling others with improvised tools scavenged from the training area. By the time the simulation ended, half the human group was still standing, including Alex and Jake. The Veilith instructor paused, tilting its head slightly as it observed the results. For the first time, Alex saw something resembling curiosity in its expression. "Explain your actions," it commanded, pointing at Alex. Alex hesitated, unsure how to respond. He glanced at Jake, who shrugged. Finally, Alex spoke. "We worked together. We used what we had. That's how we survived." The instructor didn't reply immediately. Instead, it turned and walked away, leaving the humans to process what had just happened. It wasn't praise, but it wasn't criticism either. For Alex, that was enough. As the weeks dragged on, the humans continued to adapt. They learned to read the Valith's subtle cues, figuring out which tasks earned approval and which led to punishment. They shared knowledge, helping each other improve. Claire taught others how to use the medical pods, while Alex and Jake coached their teammates on combat strategies. Slowly but surely, they began to form a bond, a fragile sense of unity born out of shared suffering. But not everyone coped well. Some humans broke under the pressure, retreating into silence or lashing out in anger. A woman named Lisa refused to participate in training exercises, sitting cross-legged on the floor and muttering prayers under her breath. Another man, Eric, attacked a Valith instructor during a drill, screaming that he wouldn't be treated like an animal. Both were taken away, never to return. Their disappearances weighed heavily on the group. Alex and Claire tried to stay positive, reminding everyone that giving up wasn't an option. "We can't let them win," Alex said one evening, addressing the group. "They think we're weak. Let's show them they're wrong." His words resonated with some, though others remained skeptical. Claire added her own encouragement, speaking softly but firmly. "We've already come so far. Look at what we've learned. Look at how we've helped each other. If we keep going, maybe we'll find a way out of this." Her optimism sparked a glimmer of hope, however faint. The humans clung to it, drawing strength from each other as they faced yet another grueling day of training. Then came the announcement. One morning, the lead Valith commander addressed the entire group, its voice echoing through the chamber. "Your preparation is complete. You will join the Valith forces in battle against the Krill. Failure is not an option." A wave of dread swept through the humans. Battle? Against the Krill? They had trained for this, but none of them truly believed it would happen. Now, staring into the cold, unfeeling eyes of their captors, they realized there was no turning back. Alex exchanged a worried glance with Claire. Neither spoke, but their expressions said everything. This was it. The moment they had been dreading and preparing for had finally arrived. The Valith wasted no time. Within hours, the humans were loaded onto smaller ships crammed together like cargo. The journey was short, though it felt endless. When the ships landed, the humans were herded onto the battlefield, their hearts pounding with fear and adrenaline. What awaited them was chaos. The Krill were monstrous creatures, towering over the humans with razor-sharp claws and armored exoskeletons. They moved with terrifying speed, swarming the battlefield in waves. The Valith fought alongside the humans, their superior weapons cutting through the Krill ranks. But even with their advanced technology, the Valith struggled to gain the upper hand. For the humans, survival became the only goal. Alex and Jake led a small group, using makeshift barriers to shield themselves from the Krill's attacks. Claire stayed close behind, patching up wounded teammates and repurposing damaged equipment into crude weapons. Despite the odds, they held their ground, fighting with a ferocity that shocked even the Valith. By the time the battle ended, the humans were battered and bloodied, but alive. And for the first time, the Valith looked at them with something resembling respect. The humans had proven themselves on the battlefield, but their victory came at a cost. Many were injured, some too badly for Claire to heal with the limited resources they had. The Krill were relentless, their sharp claws and armored bodies making them nearly impossible to kill. Even with the Valith's advanced weapons, the fight had been brutal. Yet, despite the odds, the humans had managed to hold their ground. They hadn't just survived, they had adapted. Alex and Jake stood side by side, catching their breath as the sounds of battle faded into the distance. Their bodies ached from the constant fighting, but their minds were racing. Something had changed during that fight, not just in how the Valith saw them, but in how they saw themselves. For the first time, they realized they weren't just pawns in someone else's war. They were fighters, survivors, and maybe, just maybe, they could turn this situation to their advantage. Claire walked over to them, her hands trembling slightly as she adjusted the strap of her medical bag. "We need to get moving," she said, glancing around nervously. The Valith might decide we're more trouble than we're worth. Jake nodded, wiping sweat from his forehead. She's right. We've shown them what we can do. Now we need to figure out how to use that to our advantage. Alex clenched his fists, his mind working overtime. He knew Claire was right. The Valith wouldn't tolerate disobedience forever, but he also knew they couldn't keep living like this, jumping from one battle to the next without any control over their own lives. They needed a plan, a way out. We start small, he said finally. We push back where we can, make them think twice before treating us like tools. Back aboard the Valith ship, things began to shift. The humans' performance in the last battle hadn't gone unnoticed. The Valith commanders who had once dismissed them as weak and expendable now watched them closely. There was a grudging respect in their glowing eyes, though it wasn't enough to grant the humans freedom. Instead, the Valith began testing them even harder, pushing them to their limits in new and unpredictable ways. Training sessions became more intense. Gravity shifts grew more extreme, forcing the humans to adapt faster or collapse under the strain. Combat drills introduced new challenges, alien creatures designed to mimic the Krill's speed and ferocity. Some humans broke under the pressure, retreating into silence or lashing out in anger. But others, like Alex, Claire, and Jake, only grew stronger. Claire continued to excel in the medical pods, her understanding of alien technology improving with each passing day. She taught others how to use the pods, creating a network of medics among the humans. Alex focused on strategy, studying the Valith's tactics and finding ways to exploit their weaknesses. Jake remained the group's powerhouse, using his strength to protect those who couldn't defend themselves. But it wasn't just about survival anymore. Slowly, the humans began to resist in small, subtle ways. During training exercises, they deliberately slowed down or made mistakes, buying themselves precious moments of rest. When given orders, they hesitated just long enough to show they weren't entirely obedient. These acts of defiance were minor, but they sent a message. The humans weren't broken. Not yet. One evening, after a particularly grueling session, Alex pulled Claire aside. They sat together in a corner of the chamber, away from the prying eyes of the Valith. "We need to take it further," Alex whispered, his voice low so no one else could hear. "Sabotage, disruption, anything to make them doubt us." Claire frowned, her brow furrowing. "It's risky. If they catch us, they won't," Alex interrupted. "Not if we're careful. We've already proven we can outsmart them. Let's use that." Over the next few days, the humans began implementing Alex's plan. Claire tampered with medical equipment, causing minor malfunctions that delayed treatments for injured Valith soldiers. Jake loosened bolts on training devices, making them less effective. Alex worked with a small group to spread misinformation, feeding false reports to the Valith instructors about their progress. At first, the Valith didn't notice. Their arrogance blinded them to the humans' growing resistance. But as the sabotage efforts increased, cracks began to show in their usually rigid command structure. Equipment failures disrupted training schedules. False reports led to confusion during simulations. The humans' refusal to conform chipped away at the Valith's sense of control. Then came the turning point. One night, as the humans lay in their sleeping chambers, Alex gathered a small group around him. "This is it," he said quietly, his voice steady despite the tension in the air. "We've pushed them as far as we can. Now we need to act." "What's the plan?" Claire asked, her eyes reflecting the faint glow of the alien lights overhead. "We hit them where it hurts," Alex replied. "Their pride, their belief that they're superior. We show them they're not untouchable." The group nodded, their faces grim but determined. Over the next few hours, they put their plan into motion. Using knowledge gained from weeks of observation, they targeted key areas of the ship: control panels, communication arrays, even the gravity generators. Each act of sabotage was small, barely noticeable on its own. But together they added up. By morning, chaos reigned aboard the ship. Gravity fluctuated wildly, sending Valith soldiers stumbling and crashing into walls. Communication systems failed, leaving the commanders unable to coordinate their forces. Training sessions devolved into disarray as equipment malfunctioned repeatedly. The humans watched silently, hiding their satisfaction behind blank expressions. The Valith reacted with predictable fury. Instructors barked orders, their glowing eyes flashing with rage. Punishments were handed out swiftly and brutally. But the humans didn't back down. If anything, their resolve hardened. They had struck a blow against their captors, however, small, and they weren't about to stop now. As the days passed, the humans continued their campaign of resistance. They sabotaged food supplies, causing shortages that affected both the Valith and themselves. They tampered with navigation systems, throwing off course corrections and forcing the ship to drift aimlessly for hours at a time. Each act of defiance brought them closer to their ultimate goal: escape. But escaping wasn't easy. The Valith kept tight control over their prisoners, monitoring every move and limiting access to critical areas of the ship. Breaking free would require precision, timing, and a lot of luck. Alex knew they couldn't do it alone. They needed help, from within. That's when Lisa stepped forward. Once a quiet, withdrawn woman who refused to participate in training, Lisa had found her voice during the humans' resistance efforts. She approached Alex one evening, her expression nervous but determined. "I can get us into the hangar bay," she said softly. "I've been watching the guards. I know their routines." Alex stared at her, surprise flickering across his face. "Are you sure? It's dangerous," Lisa nodded. "I'm tired of being afraid. If we're going to do this, I want to help." With Lisa's information, the humans finalized their plan. They would stage a distraction in one part of the ship, drawing the Valith's attention away from the hangar bay. While the guards were occupied, a small team led by Alex and Claire would sneak into the bay and hijack a smaller vessel. It was risky, but it was their best chance. The night of the escape, tension hung thick in the air. The humans moved quietly, their footsteps muffled by the hum of the ship's engines. As planned, a group created a diversion near the training chambers, shouting and banging on walls to draw the Valith's attention. Meanwhile, Alex, Claire, Lisa, and a few others slipped through the shadows, heading toward the hangar bay. When they reached the bay, they found it guarded by 2 Valith soldiers. Alex signaled for everyone to wait, then crept forward using debris for cover. With a quick motion, he hurled a piece of metal at a nearby console, causing sparks to fly. The guards turned, distracted by the noise, giving the group the opening they needed. Jake charged forward, tackling one guard while Alex took down the other. Inside the hangar, the humans scrambled to find a suitable ship. They settled on a sleek, compact vessel, one small enough to maneuver easily but large enough to carry all of them. Claire climbed into the cockpit, her hands moving quickly over the unfamiliar controls. "I can do this," she muttered, her voice filled with determination. As the ship's engines roared to life, alarms blared throughout the hangar. The Valith had discovered their escape attempt. Guards poured into the bay, firing plasma bolts that sizzled past the ship. Alex shouted for everyone to hold on as Claire hit the throttle, and the vessel shot forward, breaking free of the hangar's magnetic locks. Behind them, the Valith commander watched from a viewport, its glowing eyes narrowing. For a moment, it seemed frozen in thought. Then, to the surprise of its subordinates, it raised a hand signaling for the pursuit to stop. "Let them go," it said coldly. "They are no longer our concern." As the stolen ship hurtled through space, the humans inside cheered, their voices echoing in the cramped cabin. They had done it. Against all odds, they had escaped the Valith. But as Alex looked out at the vast expanse of stars ahead, he knew their journey was far from over. Earth was still out there waiting for them, and with it, a new set of challenges. "We're not safe yet," Alex said, his voice cutting through the celebration. "But we're closer than we were yesterday." Claire smiled faintly, her hands gripping the controls tightly. "Then let's keep moving together." The victory against the Krill was a turning point for the humans. For weeks they had endured brutal training, constant surveillance, and the crushing weight of knowing they were seen as expendable tools by the Valith. But on that battlefield, Something shifted. The humans didn't just survive, they thrived. They adapted, improvised, and fought with a determination that even the Valith couldn't ignore. Alex and Claire became symbols of this newfound resilience. Alex's strategic mind and Jake's raw strength had turned the tide in several key moments during the battle. Meanwhile, Claire's quick thinking and medical expertise saved countless lives. Together, they inspired their fellow humans to push harder, to think smarter, and to never give up. Slowly but surely, the humans began to see themselves not as prisoners but as survivors. But survival wasn't enough. Alex knew they couldn't stay under the Valith's control forever. He started talking to Claire about it late at night, when the others were asleep. "We've shown them we're not weak," he whispered one evening, his voice low so no one else could hear. "Now we need to show them we're not obedient." Claire nodded, her eyes reflecting the faint glow of the alien lights overhead. "But how? They're watching us all the time. We can't make a move without them knowing." "We'll have to be smart about it," Alex replied. "We've already proven we can adapt. Let's use that to our advantage." Over the next few days, Alex and Claire began quietly spreading the idea of resistance among the other humans. They didn't say much, just enough to plant seeds of doubt. During training sessions, they encouraged their teammates to question orders. In medical pods, Claire subtly sabotaged equipment, making it less effective without drawing suspicion. Alex worked with Jake to map out the layout of the ship, memorizing escape routes and weak points. It wasn't easy. The Valith were always watching, their glowing eyes scanning for signs of rebellion. Any hint of disobedience was met with swift punishment. But the humans had learned to hide their intentions well. They communicated in whispers, exchanged meaningful glances, and relied on unspoken agreements. Slowly, a plan began to take shape. Their chance came sooner than expected. One day, the Valith deployed the humans for another mission, a strike against a heavily fortified Krill outpost. The humans were sent in first, serving as a distraction, while the Valith prepared to launch a larger assault. It was a suicide mission, plain and simple. The humans knew it, but they also saw an opportunity. As they approached the outpost, Alex gathered a small group around him. "This is it," he said, his voice steady despite the chaos erupting around them. "We fight like they expect us to, but we don't die for them. We fight for ourselves." The group nodded, their faces grim but determined. Claire stayed close, clutching a makeshift weapon she had fashioned from scavenged parts. "What's the plan?" she asked. "We create chaos," Alex replied. "Draw the Krill away from the Valith forces. Then we find a way to take one of their ships. It was risky, but it was their only shot." As the battle began, the humans followed Alex's lead. They split into smaller teams, attacking the Krill from multiple angles. Their movements were unpredictable, their tactics unconventional. Instead of sticking to standard formations, they used the environment to their advantage, setting traps and creating diversions. The Krill, accustomed to fighting the methodical Valith, were caught off guard. Meanwhile, Jake led a charge toward a vulnerable section of the enemy line. "Over here!" he shouted, waving his arms to draw attention. Dozens of Krill turned to face him, their claws glinting in the dim light. Jake grinned, raising his weapon. "Come on, then." The diversion worked. With the Krill focused on Jake and his team, the Valith forces managed to breach the outpost's defenses. Explosions rocked the area as the two sides clashed. Amid the chaos, Alex spotted a smaller Krill vessel parked nearby. It was lightly guarded, its crew distracted by the battle. "This is our chance," Alex yelled, motioning for Claire and the others to follow him. They sprinted toward the ship, dodging blasts and ducking behind debris. Reaching the vessel, Alex quickly scanned the controls. He didn't understand most of it, but Claire stepped forward, her hands moving confidently over the alien interface. "I've seen this before," she muttered. "Just give me a second." Seconds felt like hours as the sounds of battle grew louder. Finally, the ship's engines roared to life. Alex helped the others climb aboard, his heart pounding. Once everyone was inside, Claire hit the throttle and the vessel lifted off the ground. Below them, the Valith commander turned its head, its glowing eyes locking onto the fleeing ship. For a moment, Alex thought they'd be pursued, but then the commander raised a hand, signaling its forces to stand down. "They're letting us go," Claire whispered, her voice filled with disbelief. "Or maybe they're just realizing they can't stop us," Alex replied, a faint smile tugging at his lips. The stolen ship hurtled through space, leaving the battlefield far behind. Inside, the humans sat in stunned silence, their bodies bruised and battered, but their spirits soaring. They had done it. Against all odds, they had escaped. But their journey was far from over. As the ship entered Earth's atmosphere, Alex stood at the viewport, staring down at the blue planet below. "Home," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. Beside him, Claire placed a hand on his shoulder. "Not quite yet," she said softly. "First, we need to warn everyone. The Vaylith aren't our friends. And if they come back—" She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Everyone on board understood what was at stake. Humanity had proven itself capable of standing toe-to-toe with galactic powers. But at what cost? When the ship touched down in a remote desert, the humans wasted no time. Using the ship's communication systems, they broadcast a message to Earth, detailing everything they had experienced: the Vaylith's arrival, their forced enlistment, and the battles they had fought. They included images and recordings as proof, hoping to convince the world of the threat looming beyond the stars. The response was immediate. Governments scrambled to assess the situation, scientists debated the implications, and ordinary people braced for the unknown. Some dismissed the message as a hoax, while others prepared for the worst. But one thing was clear: humanity would never look at the sky the same way again. For Alex and Claire, the fight was far from over. They knew the Vaylith wouldn't let them go so easily. This was just the beginning of a much larger conflict. One that would test not only their courage, but the very future of their species. As they stood together on the desert sands, watching the sun rise over the horizon, Alex turned to Claire. "We showed them what we're made of," he said, his voice filled with quiet determination. "Now let's show the rest of the galaxy." Claire smiled, her eyes reflecting the golden light of dawn. "Let's." And with that, they took their first steps toward an uncertain future, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The stolen krill ship landed in the middle of a barren desert, far from any cities or towns. Alex and Claire stepped out cautiously, their boots sinking slightly into the soft sand. The heat hit them like a wall, but they barely noticed. Their minds were racing with thoughts of what came next. They had escaped the Vaylith, but they knew it wasn't over. Not yet. Behind them, the other humans began unloading supplies from the ship. There wasn't much, just a few tools, weapons scavenged from the battlefield, and some alien tech they didn't fully understand. But it was enough to get started. For now, they needed shelter, food, and a plan. Earth might have been their home, but they were still strangers here in many ways. Everything they had learned aboard the Vaylith ship had changed them, and returning to normal life wouldn't be easy. Alex looked around at the group. Some faces were familiar. Jake, Lisa, Eric, but others were new. Over time, bonds had formed among the humans, forged in the fires of survival. They weren't just survivors anymore, they were a team. And now they had a mission. "We need to let people know what's coming," Alex said aloud, his voice steady despite the weight of his words. "If the Vaylith come back, and we need to be ready." Claire nodded, her expression serious. "But how do we make them believe us? Most people won't trust a story about aliens and intergalactic wars." "Then we show them proof," Alex replied. He turned to Jake. "Can you rig up a transmitter using the ship's systems? We need to broadcast our message globally." Jake scratched his head, thinking, "I can try. It'll take some time, though. This tech isn't exactly user-friendly." "Do what you can," Alex said. "In the meantime, we set up camp and start gathering resources. We'll need water, food, and a way to defend ourselves if anyone or anything comes looking for us." The group got to work immediately. Some dug trenches for shelter, while others scavenged nearby rocks and debris to build makeshift walls. Claire used her medical knowledge to treat minor injuries and ensure everyone stayed hydrated in the scorching heat. Alex coordinated efforts, assigning tasks and keeping morale high. Despite their exhaustion, the humans worked together seamlessly, driven by a shared purpose. By nightfall, they had a rudimentary camp set up. A small fire crackled in the center, casting flickering shadows on their faces. Around it, the groups gathered, their eyes reflecting both fear and determination. Alex stood up, addressing them. "We've made it this far because we stuck together," he said. "Now we have to keep going. Tomorrow we'll send out our message. After that, we prepare for whatever comes next." No one spoke for a moment. The weight of his words hung heavy in the air. Then Lisa, who had once refused to fight, raised her hand hesitantly. What if no one believes us?" she asked softly. Alex knelt down beside her, meeting her gaze. "Then we show them. We don't give up. That's what got us here, and that's what'll keep us alive." The next morning, Jake managed to cobble together a functioning transmitter. Using pieces of the Krill ship's communication array, he patched it into a satellite network, broadcasting their message across the globe. The transmission included everything: their capture, their training, the battles they fought, and the truth about the Valith and the Krill. They even included footage captured during the skirmishes, showing the terrifying reality of interstellar warfare. At first, there was silence. Hours passed with no response. The humans grew restless, wondering if their message had reached anyone at all. Then, slowly, the world began to react. News outlets picked up the story, debating its authenticity. Governments issued statements, some dismissing it as a hoax, others launching investigations. Social media exploded with theories and speculation. For the first time in history, humanity was forced to confront the possibility that they weren't alone in the universe. Back at the camp, the humans monitored the reactions closely. Alex and Claire listened to radio broadcasts, piecing together fragments of information. Some countries mobilized military forces, preparing for potential invasion. Others called for calm, urging citizens not to panic. Amid the chaos, one thing became clear: the world was divided. Fear and uncertainty ruled the day. "We've done all we can," Claire said after hours of listening to conflicting reports. "Now it's up to them." Alex shook his head. "Not quite. If the Valith come back, and I'm sure they will, they're not going to wait for humanity to unite. We need to take matters into our own hands." Over the following days, the group focused on fortifying their position. They expanded their camp, building stronger defenses and setting traps around the perimeter. Jake worked tirelessly to modify alien weapons, adapting them for human use. Claire taught others basic first aid, ensuring everyone knew how to handle injuries. Alex led reconnaissance missions, scouting the surrounding area for signs of danger. Despite their preparations, tensions ran high. The isolation, combined with the constant threat of discovery, weighed heavily on everyone. Arguments broke out over minor issues, and tempers flared. But through it all, Alex and Claire remained steadfast, reminding the group why they were fighting. "We've faced worse than this," Alex said during one particularly heated dispute. "Remember where we came from. Remember what we've already overcome." His words calmed the group, rekindling their sense of unity. Slowly, they began to find a rhythm, working together to improve their chances of survival. They trained daily, honing their combat skills and practicing strategies for dealing with both the Valith and the Krill. They studied the alien tech they had salvaged, learning how to repair and repurpose it. Every day brought new challenges, but also new opportunities to grow stronger. Then, one evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the sky lit up with an eerie glow. At first, the humans thought it was lightning, but when the rumbling grew louder and the ground began to shake, they realized the truth. Something was coming. "It's them," Claire whispered, her voice trembling. She clutched a modified plasma, rifle tightly, her knuckles white. Alex grabbed a pair of binoculars and scanned the horizon. Sure enough, a massive ship descended from the sky, its silhouette unmistakable. It wasn't Krill, it was Valith. "They found us," he said grimly. Turning to the group, he shouted, "Get to your positions, now!" The humans sprang into action, taking cover behind the makeshift walls and arming themselves with whatever they could find. Jake manned a mounted turret, his hands steady despite the adrenaline coursing through him. Lisa crouched beside Claire, clutching a knife and trying to steady her breathing. Alex stood near the front, his eyes locked on the descending ship. When the Valith emerged, they did so with overwhelming force. Dozens of soldiers poured out, their sleek armor glinting in the moonlight. Behind them loomed towering machines, bristling with weapons. The humans exchanged nervous glances, knowing they were outnumbered and outgunned. But they didn't retreat. Instead, they waited, their resolve hardened by weeks of preparation. The battle began with a deafening roar. Plasma bolts streaked through the air, lighting up the desert like fireworks. The humans fought with everything they had, using their knowledge of the terrain to stay one step ahead. Jake unleashed a barrage of fire from his turret, forcing the Valith to scatter. Claire and Lisa darted between cover points, picking off stragglers with precision shots. Alex coordinated attacks, directing the group's movements with calm efficiency. But the Valith were relentless. Their advanced technology gave them the upper hand, and soon the humans found themselves pushed back. Just when it seemed like all hope was lost, something unexpected happened. From the distance, a fleet of military vehicles approached, headlights blazing. Human reinforcements had arrived. It turned out that their message hadn't fallen on deaf ears. While much of the world remained skeptical, certain governments had taken the threat seriously. They had tracked the signal to the desert and mobilized troops to investigate. When they saw the Valith attacking the group, they joined the fight without hesitation. With the combined forces of the humans and the military, the tide of the battle shifted. The Valith, caught off guard by the sudden alliance, began to falter. One by one, their machines fell and their soldiers retreated. By sunrise, the battlefield was quiet, littered with wreckage and ash. As the dust settled, Alex and Claire stood side by side, surveying the aftermath. They were battered and bruised, but alive. Around them, the surviving humans cheered, their voices echoing across the desert. For the first time in months, they felt a glimmer of hope, but Alex knew better than to celebrate too soon. "This isn't the end," he said, his voice low. "The Valith won't stop, neither will the Krill. This is just the beginning." Claire nodded, her expression resolute. "Then we keep fighting, together." And with that, they turned toward the rising sun, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead.